Good morning. Great. Well, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, and especially Mary for joining us this morning. This is Lean In Energy Networks. We're doing kind of a holiday conversation with the fabulous Mary Bass on talent and shifts that we're seeing in the energy market. And just to remind everyone, I'm Julie McLaughlin. I'm a board member of Lean In Energy Network, and our mission is to support women in energy in achieving their career ambitions. And I'm just thrilled to have this conversation today. Mary is a wealth of information, and she's been a fearless advocate for women in energy for many years. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with her and share, enable her to share all of her wisdom with everyone. And so I'll let her kind of introduce herself and give you a little bit about her background, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Thank you, Julie, and greetings, everyone. As Julie said, I'm Mary Bass. I'm a partner with Spencer Stewart, where I've been for the last 25 years, and I work on executive search as well as board search. And before that, many of you probably don't realize I was in private equity before that for almost 15 years. I've been working a long time. I get stimulated by work, and I'm a big advocate for women, so I'm thrilled to be here today.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I forgot about that, the private equity piece as well. Seems very pertinent today with all of the large fundraising that's happening in the space. Great. So I think if we could kind of kick it off with you sharing maybe an overview of the trends that you're seeing in the energy industry with respect to kind of, talent acquisition from both the employer and the candidate side. And just give us like kind of a very, brief lay of the land. What's happening today in the energy space?
Well, I would say in a word, it's very dynamic. Companies are trying to figure out how to get people to return to work. What's the best model with the hybrid model? If you're with respect to hiring trends, Spencer Stewart and our competitors and other search firms, we're doing a lot of remote interviewing for the first interview. So virtual is here to stay. And then as it gets more serious, it's in person, because there's nothing like being in person when that's possible. But the first line of interviewing is typically virtual. And let's just say right now during the holidays, if we've got an urgent search and you're going to be in Disney World with your family, you can still interview for that big position. Just take, an hour out of the day and do it. So one of the big trends is virtual, and that's post-pandemic. We all got a lot more comfortable with virtual, and I think it's a very efficient way to get things done. Also, all companies are trying to figure out flexibility and how it could work for them, how flexibility can work for their employees. And the word flexibility is just, the word of the day. And I think a lot of the things that are happening with respect to what's going on in the energy sector are driven by the employee and what the employees want out of work. And I think a great deal of that is based on trust. Employees want to be trusted by their companies, and that's where a lot of this return to work comes into play. So do you think that changes based on like the segment of, or the type of business offering? Yes, I definitely do. Because I did a survey of CHROs, they're friends of mine, with about 15 companies, different sizes, different parts of the energy sector, to see what was going on with them. And it does vary by, is it oilfield service, or is it another company? Is it a consulting company? It does vary. As an example, Spencer Stewart, we're a consulting company, we're a search firm. And while it would seem that we should be able to work anywhere, it's really important to be with this multi-generational workforce that we have. That's another trend. You've got a multi-generational workforce. Some people are working longer. And so you need to coexist and figure out how to coexist with others that are not your same vintage, which
Mhm.
is healthy. But I think it does matter. That absolutely makes a difference.
And do you think that that's an interesting point in terms of the multi-generational workforce? Do you think that that's different than it was before, or just that now younger generations feel more empowered to kind of be different than those that have gone before them? And so now you're having, rather than conforming to an existing way of working, you're having to broker compromise in the workplace.
It's a new day. I think it's a new day. And I think you just put your finger on it, which is this next generation care about things, and they do feel empowered. They are able to make a difference because there's such a war for talent. They can go across the street if they're not happy. And so I don't really think it's the great resignation as much as it is the great reassessment. I think employees of today are assessing, am I happy where I am? Are they developing me? Do they care about me? Do they trust me? And that's reflected by what companies are allowing them to do. But it's a give and take. If the employer trusts the employee at home, the employee has the responsibility to be trustworthy and to do what they're supposed to do and not abuse the privilege. And that's why different companies are all trying to figure out what is the right balance. What should we mandate X number of days in the office? How should we do it? And they're all kind of experimenting with what is ideal. I had breakfast with a woman this morning who told me that her company did a survey. IT did the survey to test productivity, and it was down 20%. So the CEO mandated everybody come back in the office. I hadn't heard that one before, but I think you can measure productivity. You want to make sure that you don't lose any productivity. But on the other hand, I think the word trust is key to the whole thing. We trust you, you trust us, but you have to, trust is a live concept. You earn it. And I think it's important that we need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And have you seen any companies, employ a strategy you think that's working particularly well with that, trying to strike that balance of hybrid and trust versus engagement? You don't have to say the name of the company, but the structure, if you've seen any specific structure.
I haven't seen the actual structure yet, but I can just speak from my own experience with Spencer Stewart. When the pandemic first hit, we did a survey of all employees to see, well, how do you feel comfortable when this moves on? Where do you feel comfortable? And a number of employees who said they wanted to work remotely now are reconsidering, and now they want to go back in the office. So it's changing over time. And it's all about, do you feel safe in the office? And if you don't, stay home. And that means maybe you don't want to, you feel you're immunocompromised and you don't want to expose yourself to people who are not well. I think a lot of that is kind of passing. People are more responsible about their own health. And so I think it's getting better where you can go into the office and feel comfortable that anybody that's sick will stay home.
And that's definitely a positive trend.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a positive trend. So I think things like that are healthy, but I don't have one particular company I can say this is the ideal thing. I think it's evolving. I think it's just evolving as we get further and further away from the pandemic, because I've personally declared it over.
Great. No, that's really interesting. In terms of I'm really interested in, those job seekers or members of our community that are maybe thinking about finding a new job. And let's say they've identified a company that they'd like to work for. What are some of the kind of strategies that you've seen be effective, in addition to engaging, a headhunting firm like Spencer Stewart, or maybe you could even talk about what's the best way to engage you, and kind of what are the key recommendations you have for people trying to get into a specific opportunity.
Okay, well, first of all, let me make clear what we do. We are hired by the company who is looking for their solution. So we don't find positions for people. We need to know people though. So it's important that people be in our database so we're aware of them. So make sure that you're in the database of the search firms. That's one thing. And if you've been, at the first part of your question, did you say that an introduction had been made or they had identified what they wanted to
Sure. Do? Yeah, that there's a specific, they've identified. I mean, you could take it kind of however you want, but I seem to get the most questions from people that have a specific target in mind and are trying to figure out how to maneuver to get into that group.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's say you want a chief accounting officer position at an energy company. I'm just making this up. Well, then what you want to do, of course, you have to make sure that you have the right credentials for the role. But I would make sure that I was known to the search firms that do those searches. I would network my way into the companies that I would be proud to join and see, do I know anyone there? Can I network my way there? I'd use the tools like LinkedIn and the other tools to see if I know anybody in the company. I would communicate it to the people in my network who are my trusted advisors. Let it be part that would be of keen interest to you, because if you don't let people know what you want, they can't help you. And so
that's very true.
So I think it's very important to be clear about what you'd like to do and be astute enough to know you're not always going to get what you want, but you might get something even better than that if you have that conversation with your trusted advisors and people that are in positions where they can help you.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great advice. And just for the broader audience, how do you identify, kind of which are the search firms that are positioned for certain areas of the market?
Well, that's a very good question.
I don't know the answer myself. So I kind of thought, don't know the answer to that question.
I think that's talking to your network. That's talking to people. That's finding out. Well, people in that, let's say that chief accounting officer role, let's take that as an example. Do you know some chief accounting officers, and ask them who's active? Who are they getting calls from? So you can find out, like who's getting those by asking people who already have the role you want at another company, perhaps. And you can, I'm a big advocate of so not necessarily social media, but I like looking on LinkedIn and the internet, Google and Google and play around with it. You can probably find out, and it'll show you. It'll give you that. So that's what I would do. I would do that. I would talk to people, and I would use the internet to do some homework and see chief accounting officer positions in Houston and see what comes up. Things like that.
No, that's a great idea. And kind of more broadly, as people think about strategies beyond just getting that, next role, what are some of the things that you think are winning strategies for a successful career over time, and maybe some of the strategies that you've implemented in your diverse career?
To be consistent, to be authentic, to build a thoughtful network that you enjoy. Don't sign up for things. Don't sign up because you won't. Don't sign up unless you're going to show up. So I've been involved with things throughout my career that kind of were interesting to me, and therefore I showed up and I was active, and I built some deep quality relationships. And those deep quality relationships that you build are invaluable to you throughout your career. And it's interesting because some of my clients today were relationships that I initiated 30 years ago. And
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so gratifying to me. And I still use that word Rolodex because I think it's a cooler word than contacts. But I met this young girl one time who said, "What's the secret to a successful career?" And I said, "Well, all the people in your Rolodex, stay in touch with them because I'm doing business with people I met and started a relationship 30 years ago, maybe now 40 years ago. I've been in Houston 40 years. Anyway, and she said, "Thank you, Mary." And then she said, she asked me if she could ask me a question. And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, what's a Rolodex?" Of course, I had one so big, that Rolodex.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I don't know how you found it. Like that's one of the things that I often think about, like how did you remember, right? Because like I kind of feel like there's certain people in LinkedIn that I'm like, remember one thing or the other, but if it wasn't for the search engine in LinkedIn, I wouldn't be able to recall. So I don't know that I would be as successful flipping through the cards myself.
yeah. Well, for those of you who are too young to remember what a Rolodex is, it was like a card file, and if you had it on that circular thing and you roll that, I just vividly remember it. But your Rolodex are your contacts, and you need to stay in touch with them. It's a lot easier today with the internet and with social media and with LinkedIn and all these other tools. It's a lot easier. But when I got started, we didn't have it, but I think I have one in my head. And I think that because, after the pandemic, I wanted to get in touch with people that I was with in my earlier career, and I did. I was a credit analyst in the 80s, and I got the credit analysts together because I wanted to see them again.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got the girls in. I was in a sorority at one school, but I got that same sorority, the girls that I know from the same sorority from a number of different schools, I got them together. I wanted to see my people because the pandemic prevented me from seeing people. My husband has asthma, so I had to be very careful at the beginning, and I just wanted to see my people. But I think that's probably an effective strategy, is to take care of your relationships, stay in touch with people along the way, even if it's not every week, every month. I think that is an effective strategy for building a successful career. I think joining organizations for which you have passion and you enjoy it. Like, I've been a very active member of the Girl Scouts. I don't have children, but I'm a big advocate for women, and that's one way that I can make sure that we're reaching to the young women, and I think helping build their self-esteem and their confidence. And I had a fashion show one time as a fundraiser for the Girl Scouts, and we had our gold award recipients, which are like that's the Eagle Award for women.
Mm-hmm.
The gold award, they modeled. And what was so cool, we had the business women who were my age and younger, were there talking about deals, trying on clothes, interacting with these gold award recipients who just were like little sponges, absorbing what we were doing. We were networking, we were trying on clothes, we were actually raising money for the Girl Scouts, and it was just great for them to see that.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point there, Mary, because I personally love networking. A lot of people, perceive it as a chore, but it doesn't have to be a chore. You can do something fun. It doesn't have to be stuffy or constrained. You can be trying on clothes and chatting or doing something, more active, depending on where your kind of your likes and passions are.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think it's contrived.
Mm-hmm.
And I disagree. I just think it's a natural way to interact with other people. And I think the pandemic prevented us from interacting with each other because we had to be so careful. But, as we discovered, we had BCG and Lean In Energy had an event about a month ago, and I was on a panel, and it was in person. And I think they had to rush. They had to kind of, march us out a little bit because nobody wanted to leave. And yes, the food and all that was wonderful, but it was fun to be with people. It was fun to interact and catch up and talk and be with people. And I think that's one of the valuable lessons we learned from the pandemic is, we do enjoy being together. And I think that's part of the magic, what comes out of joining organizations that you care about.
Yeah,
Which
no,
is
that
good for your career.
absolutely, absolutely. And that applies for both, what pays you and what doesn't pay you.
Right. That's exactly right. Speaking of the pandemic, when I came in, it must have had a huge impact on me. In fact, I know it did, because I came out of the pandemic with two things top of mind. One was to spend the rest of my life helping package people to achieve their goals. I'm good at it. I have a global platform. I don't make money out of it. It comes back to me in many, many ways, but I don't worry about it. I get a lot of gratification from it. And the second thing was to be more intentional about spending time with my husband, because I think we have 20 more good years together. We're very active together. We've been married 40 years. Well, 40 if he makes it.
Congratulations.
To May. Yeah, thank you. To May, because I don't want to take anything for granted. But I think that's because things fine-tuned for me during the pandemic. My priorities changed, and which I think is a very healthy thing. But it was just like a big wake-up call for the world. I think the pandemic was. It caused us to stop, reflect, and take a hard look at our lives.
So I have a question there. So do you think your priorities actually changed, or do you think you just kind of got in touch with the most important things and then re-emphasize those as kind of key priorities?
Probably the latter. I had the priorities. I knew family, health, that was all very important to me. But I think, to your point, I became more intentional about it. You cannot take it for granted.
Yes.
Because that you just can't take it for granted. And I learned the hardest thing was we had to stop. We kind of had to stop. You couldn't go work out. The gym was closed. You couldn't, go to lunches and things, and you had to stop and reflect what's really important. And the other thing that came to me was, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? What do you want to be known for? You can be more intentional about that too. And
it's never too early to start thinking about that.
No, and we were going so fast. We were kind of all at warp speed, and then we stopped. And that was a good thing. That was a healthy thing.
Absolutely. So for those people, who have that clarity now and know where they're going, I'd love to hear kind of some of the creative, because in our, in kind of our prep conversation, you shared some of your kind of creative strategies for advancing your career and making moves both internally and between companies. I love to just kind of hear what are your go-to strategies for
advancing your career internally?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that it's important to network internally at your company as well as externally. You need to know your colleagues. That's important. They need to know you. They need to know you, because part of getting promoted and given opportunities and stretch opportunities is knowing you and knowing what you're all about. So if you just keep your head down and don't go to lunch with the other people and don't do anything with the other people, they don't know you, and they don't know what your talents are. And they don't know what your personality is. And sometimes it's not really skill sets. It's more than that. It's, well, we can throw her at this because she's resilient and she'll get it done. They have to get to know you. So I would look the part for what I wanted to do. I would dress the part for where I wanted to go within a company. I'd never underestimate the power of being the right package for where you want to go. And I remember the old expression, clothes make the man or the woman. It's really more than that. It's your whole look. I mean, and that kind of goes back to something real important to me, which is health. I feel really good every day. because I work out every day. Now, does everybody need to do that? No, but maybe you should work out 3 times a week. But I think I project energy because I feel good about me, and therefore people know, I've got the stamina to get it done. And yes, I am a runner. I really don't run anymore, but I look like I do, so everybody thinks I do. And my tagline is, "I'll get you over the finish line." But
That's great.
I think being healthy, interacting with your colleagues, so that they know you. And I think if you say you're going to do it, deliver it.
Mhm.
Don't say it if you're not going to do it. I lose so much confidence in people that promise me they'll do it and they miss the deadline and they never do it. If you're late, that's one thing, but follow through. Follow through is critically important in everything you do, because that builds trust, and then people will trust that you can get it done, and then you'll get promoted and things happen and they ask you to do some wonderful thing. So things like that is pretty simple. I think you've got to follow through. I think you've got to look the part. I think you need to be authentic. Don't try to be somebody that you're not.
Which is very refreshing in many respects, right? You don't have to be somebody else. You just have to kind of get in touch with who you really are.
Yeah. I had a client situation this week where the client got very upset, and I advised the person who's on my team. I said, "You made a mistake," because I was hearing some excuses. I said, "You made a mistake, own it. Own that mistake and see what happens." And in this case, this was a female. She owned the mistake, and the client got completely over it and they were fine. People just want you to take responsibility for what you do, because if you don't take responsibility for what you do or don't do, then you can't move on. And people get hung up and upset about that because you didn't take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thing is, if you make a mistake, own it and move on. That's another.
And we all make mistakes, right? It's impossible to advance without making mistakes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes you have to test yourself. And if you fail, you just pick yourself up and keep going. That's the other thing about, I think, stamina, tenacity, all those words, great words in your personal life, in your work life, and everything you do.
Yeah. One of the other things that I spend a lot of time thinking about is that, that kind of cliche, what got you here won't get you there. So I'd love to hear, maybe 1 or 2 things that you yourself have had to unlearn that got you to a certain point in your career, but you realized you were going to have to let go of if you wanted to get to the next level.
Oh, yeah. One of them is to be assertive and be aggressive. Not everybody can handle that, so you have to kind of back off on that when it's too. Another one similar to that is, be very direct. Well, in my private equity life, my partner was Lloyd Benson, and he taught me to be diplomatic in my delivery of messages. So you want to say it in a way where you kind of package it so you take the sting out, as opposed to being too direct. So you don't want to be too direct. I had to learn that one. And then the other one is, speak up. Well, there are times that you should speak up, but there are times you should shut up and listen, to quote, Tillman's new book, Shut Up and Listen. That's in the title. That's great advice, because sometimes you just need to shut up and listen. And listening is one of those things I wish I had known earlier, the importance of listening. That's so hard for somebody that talks as much as I do. I own it.
I'm with you there.
Sometimes it's really good to just listen. And so I think that's a trait that a lot of people would benefit from.
And that comes back to your confidence, right? I think I've found, that it's a skill to be practiced, certainly listening, but when you move out of trying to prove yourself, you get that level of confidence, and you don't feel like you have to talk to prove yourself. You can actually hear what you need to hear in certain conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made me think about one other thing I think that makes people successful is to be approachable. because if you're not approachable, if you don't put some time in your day for people, when you're in the office or wherever you are, for these young people or other people who want to learn from you or ask you about something, you need to not be so overstructured, overplanned, where you don't have some free time for them to approach you. I learned this just the other day at a holiday party where, one of our young guys said, could I buy you a cup of coffee or take you to coffee, or because I'd really like to ask you, how you did it. Well, I've just never had that opportunity with this gentleman to give him time to approach me or to give him that, the venue. And I'm thinking that's something we should probably all think about, is not to be so overstructured that you don't have those, give people opportunities to approach you, because I learn from them, they learn from me. And it's real rewarding both ways. And there you go with the whole multi-generational thing. I know that sometimes next generational people, and I tell them this, don't think they need us baby boomers, but they do. And the reason that they do, they need all these different generations. But one of the reasons they need the boomers is we've been through cycles. Mm-hmm. And when you get a little, you feel a little uncomfortable because the world's going kind of fast, and maybe it's a little tense, and then we have a pandemic and a downturn and all this stuff. And, we the boomers have been through cycles, and we can help give you the assurance that this too will pass. It'll be okay. Just hang in there. So I think that's just another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, great advice. So if, let's say, this gentleman or yourself, what is, kind of, if you could go back and give your 30-year-old self one kind of piece of advice or one piece of information, what would that be?
Be more self-aware. I wish I was as self-aware at 20 as I am today, so that I would know not everybody, wants to me to be as aggressive as I can be, or not everybody, not everybody's going to like me, and it's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. But
I do like you though, Mary, just for the record.
Thank you. No, but not everybody's going to like us. And it's okay. Everybody's different. And so that also helps you figure out, how to connect with people who aren't like you. And, and one of the big things that I've learned to do is accept people, accept people as a package. They're very different than me. They do things differently. They look at things differently, but their perspective is interesting if I would shut up and listen. So a lot of my stuff is circuitous, isn't it?
No, I mean, they're really useful insights for sure. Well, I think I'd love to get a conversation going here. We have a great group of attendees this morning. So if anybody wants to start us off with a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from the group. Denise?
Hi, Mary. It's been really enjoyable listening to you. I know you've talked a lot about multi-generational folks, and the value that, say, baby boomers, and as one of those myself, I'm really interested in understanding, given that we're working longer, many of us don't want to retire for whatever reason it is. And so I'm just interested in understanding what's the lay of the land for older folks, because we've always grown up with the idea that once you get past a certain age, companies don't want you. I'm not quite sure that is still as relevant as it may have been, because there's more of us now who are in the workplace, or we've got our own businesses, or we're working contract work. What's your take on it?
I think the sky's the limit. I think there are endless possibilities for things to do. Maybe you've been in one career and you want to make a lane change and do something different. Why not? As long as you have the stamina and the energy to do it, you can, but you need to figure out where are your skills best used? What would be interesting for you to do? Where's the need? I've often said that, I've been at Spencer Stewart for 25 years. I really enjoy what I do, but then at some point I'll make a lane change and do something else. It may be something with women. It may be packaging women. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think about that, and I think about what's next. And I think all of us need to be having that conversation with ourselves. Some people, especially my husband, is a happy retiree. And when he sold his business, I said, "Are you sure you want to retire? Because I'm not ready." And he said, "I'm not retiring. I'm positioning myself for what's next." Well, so far, that's golf, guitar lessons, and the theory of music. And he is so happy with that. But I'm not sure that would work for me. So when I do something else, it's going to be something with people and something, I'm just not sure what it is, but I have confidence that there will be something next for me. And so I think, to answer your question, I think modern science and modern medicine has enabled us to live longer, plus we're taking better care of ourselves. So some people are happy just, golfing and whatnot, but others who have been stimulated by what they do need to go do something else. And like I said, maybe it's a lane change. Like for me, it's going to be something similar to probably what I've been doing, but it could be something radically different. But I think it's out there, and I think you need to talk to people who know you and just kind of kick it around with people who are your trusted advisors and say, and if there's something that's appealing to you, go have coffee with somebody in that field, or go have, one thing, one thing that I've thought a lot about is we all have a brand. I think I have a brand, and I didn't even intend to build a brand, but I have a brand just because I'm out there. And maybe that's something that people can do, is work on personal brands with people, or whatever it is that's of interest to them. Maybe a hobby could turn into something, that'd be more a for-profit endeavor, or who knows, or maybe you've had a bump in the road, and from the bump in the road in your life, it gave you a perspective on something you'd like to do for others to prevent them from having that same bump in the road.
Right.
So I think it's a great question. I think it's today more than ever, the sky's the limit, to repeat what I already said. I think, and I'm glad you asked the question, because I think you're a great example of, multiple things in a career that have been fun, and keep going.
And I think that one of the things that I've learned, and it was an interesting lesson, is instead of focusing on age, others will often focus on your energy or your passion. And if you can demonstrate that, what happens is that they don't see your age anymore, or it becomes an interesting thing. Wow, you're doing that at that age. Not that I think hopefully I'm not that old yet, but I think energy and passion are not the remit of the young. And so I think, and I think this time in this world is a time where, as you say, we can really reach for the stars in many of the things that we do, even if it's later in our career, or it's a different career, because we do have 100-year life now, as the pundits all tell us. So thanks, Mary. I've really appreciated that. And yeah,
you're welcome. Another thing that I'm a big advocate for is having friends in all ages, because you learn from them. I happen to have nieces and nephews in all ages, but friends in all ages, and I have that too. And one of my girlfriends died last year at 110, and I met her when she was 99. And
we
would go out and have girls' night out. And if some of you might, if you've known me for a while, you've probably seen pictures of me on different things. Her name was Jewel McCullough. I learned so much from Jewel, and she learned from me. And it was great, because we'd go out at least once a month, and like I said, girls' night out, and we'd go and have one glass of wine, and if you brought her a small glass, she'd tell you she was only having one, and she wanted a country club glass of wine. We had more fun. I learned so much from her. So I think that's important. I just ran across something because I had been forewarned I might be asked about strategies for long-term success. So let me make sure I go over this because I had some other points. That's why I have to write things down. So one of the things I think will prepare you for long-term success is to be healthy. You know, you can be a healthy whatever age you are, and that's a good thing. So I'm a big believer in being healthy. You need a reasonable balance to take care of your body, your family, sleep, food, and work. All of those things need balance, and they all take time and focus. This is really important to me. Integrity. It's fragile. Protect it. So your own personal integrity, just know how important that is. Never compromise. And I've said this before, but if you sign up, show up. If you join a board, show up. Don't join it just to check a box. If you sign up, show up. And then, as I said, listen closely, because that's something I've had to work hard on. And then the last thing, which I'm going to repeat myself, is to be self-aware. Because like I said, it was the big shock to me, and it hurt my feelings when I realized people didn't like me. But I'm okay with that now, and especially because Julie just told me she liked me, so I'm good. And Denise, I hope that's what that meant. No, but being self-aware is a healthy thing. Not everybody's going to connect with you or your energy or what you're wearing or what you do, and that's okay. Are there any other questions? Anything else I can opine on, something that on somebody's mind?
So Mary, this is Helen. Hi.
Hey, Helen.
One of the things I know about you is you have this wicked sense of humor, and you're not afraid to show it. And I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. How do you appropriately use humor when you are either searching for a job or networking?
Well, thank you, Helen. It's great to hear you, and thank you for the question. I think humor is the most amazing thing. I think both my parents had great senses of humor, and I've just always used it, but it can lighten the mood. You know, if something's real serious, like if you're in a, it's kind of bogging down, if you find a way to insert humor into that, it can just lighten it. It can endear people to you, especially if you make fun of yourself. Mm-hmm. For me, with my very Southern accent, which Helen knows is a little disarming because I come across real sweet and nice.
Little do they know.
But if somebody messed with my husband, I'd break their knees. And you know that I can. So if you use humor like that, you can lighten the mood. You can endear them to you. You can let them know that, it's not that tragic. It's not that, let it go. Just let it go, reset. So I hope that's helpful, but yeah, I do have a sense of humor, and there's so much to laugh about, and there's so much to be amused by. You can either get mad or be amused. And I choose to be amused because it's a better setting and it doesn't last as long. Anything else?
Thanks.
One other thing I was thinking about, you asked me about unlearning. Another thing to think about, or actually just something else to put into your life is, like I said, I'm very, very physical, but I'd say when we take ourselves too serious and we get all wound up, my thought is to put more yoga into your life and to breathe. But what I mean is, if you get stressed out, pause, and we do, and breathe and reset. The world can wait for you while you pull yourself together. Because if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of all the others who depend on you. And the new word for that is self-care. And I think that's real important, is self-care. Because you can't do anything for anybody, especially you and your family, if you don't take care of yourself. And a lot of that is what's going on in your head It's important. What are you thinking about? I think it's important to try to keep it clear and keep it positive, because it's easy to get down. Don't listen to the news too often. I mean,
Yeah.
stay current, but don't become a junkie where you got to stay tuned to the news every 5 minutes, because it's not all good. And I'm not trying to say be Pollyanna. I'm just saying, you know, a positive outlook, and keeping positive thoughts in your head will take you longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things in terms of unlearning that I've had to unlearn, or I should say two things. One is, you know, saying yes to everything. And two, you know, that feeling that you have to be, you have to gain a certain level of expertise or skills to be effective at something, right? And that people always expect you to know what you're doing. So those are the kind of things that I've had to unlearn, I think, to get to the next level and realize, okay, no, I can't actually say yes to everything if I'm going to be effective. And it's okay not to have all the answers, or not to know exactly how you're going to approach something. If you have, you know, a structured process and a thoughtful approach, you'll get to the right answer, even if you don't have the right answer when you start.
Right. Well, on that second point, I would say if you don't know everything, but you know where to get it. You know, as long as you know where to get what you don't know, then I think that's half the battle right there. You say, well, I don't know that, but I know where to get it, and I'll come back to you. That reminds me of one of my nieces has 2 little girls who were born 3 months premature. And so she's had a lot of ups and downs, but today they talk and walk, and they're beautiful 6-year-olds, and they weren't supposed to do any of that, but they do. But anyway, it made her, going through that with her children, made her a better dentist, because she said, if you come to her with a problem for your child, she doesn't just dismiss you and like, oh, I don't know. She'll say, I don't have that, but I'm going to get it for you. She learned that by these dilemmas with children with issues by being born too soon. And so I think that's a cool way to do it. I mean, that's a good outcome for what she's been through, which is, well, I don't have it, but I'll get it, and I'm going to get it. And then she delivers, because she signed up, so she's going to follow through, because I'm her aunt. Heard those things from me a few times.
That's great. And I love that example that, you know, it kind of transcends your career, right? So it's not just about energy professionals doing something specific, and it can be even unrelated to what your day job is. So I love that, that example. That's incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm. One of my nieces lost her mother when she was 10. And she said, Aunt Mary, Mom said that when I was 16, she would take me to New York. Will you take me to New York? And we made a pinky promise. And so when she turned 16, I called her and I said, so when are we going to New York? And I took her to New York, and I said, that's called follow through. That's called follow through. We made a promise, you know, all those years ago. I'm following through. And that little girl was valedictorian with no mom for 10 years. And she just got early admission into med school.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Cool. But those simple things like follow through and, you know, you say you're going to do it, pays off. And it does transcend your personal life, your career, your inspiration to your nieces and nephews and all that. And so consistency.
That's wonderful. Any other questions from the broader group? Great. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure as always, Mary. You shared so many incredible pearls of wisdom with the team, and I've had a blast. Given me lots to think about over the holidays and planning. I like to reflect at the end of every year, you know, kind of what's gone well, what could have been, you know, a little bit better, and set my intentions for the next year. So I'm going to be, you know, leveraging a lot of your advice in that process this year. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time.
You're more than welcome. And thank everybody, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.